What is up, Mullet Gang? It is your favorite neuro-edgy duo, ready to empower the fuck out of you.
Are you ready to break free from the chains of neurotypical expectations? Hi, I'm Susie.
And I'm Amy. What's up?
And together, we are the Mullet Gang. Hey everybody, what's up? We are so excited to be bringing on Chris. She is an amazing person. I mean, honestly, I think our talk really kind of opened my mind and really gave me a lot to think about when it comes to my sexuality, my relationship, and how having ADHD does affect all of that. And I think that, it's a taboo subject. People don't like talking about it because it's uncomfortable. I mean, even today, me opening up right now and just saying all that, it's hard, but I think that it's like a valid conversation. And I think that more women need to be talking about this with one another, with their providers, and especially with their therapist.
Yeah, for sure. And you and I are all about bringing the taboo topics to light. Let's talk about it. This doesn't have to be uncomfortable or awkward. Sex is a normal biological thing. It's important for ourselves. It's important for our relationships. It's an important aspect of life. So being able to talk about sex, intimacy, dating, relationships, and how that is impacted by being neurodivergent and having ADHD, I think is such an important conversation. You can't be afraid to talk about it. So I'm so glad we were able to create this space and also have Chris on, who can represent the queer community and kind of the queer ADHD voice, because I think that's also really important to bring light to. And yeah, we need to talk about these things, break stigmas, and bring awareness to the community. That's what we're all about.
So her Instagram, Distracted Love Chris. Distracted Love. I love that name because that's kind of the way that I would describe having ADHD and being in a relationship, especially when you get to that comfy stage in your relationship where you're committed, you live together, you've been together for years. Now life is happening as you're navigating through the world together, and sometimes I think a lot of it can kind of get in the way and keep you distracted. And so I think that some of the things that she has to share with us is valuable and can offer a lot of resources to those who might be feeling that their relationship is in a place where it's challenging and they feel challenged by their brain and the way that their brain operates. And so I think this conversation was really cool, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. And let us know what you think.
Hell yeah. So this first part to our 2-episode series, Deeper Well, episode 12, is where Chris talks about her diagnosis journey and kind of finding a new path after getting access to a diagnosis, treatment, kind of figuring out what that all meant to her life. And the second part is super juicy and spicy. That's where we dive into her actual career and how she's been a sex educator and a huge advocate and teacher and coach for relationships, dating, sex, intimacy, all the things, and how she's really found a niche with supporting the neurodivergent community and ADHDers in that area. So 2 jam-packed episodes with lots of spice and fun. So here is episode 12, Deeper Well, and stay tuned for episode 13, which will be coming out next week. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, welcome. So today we have Chris, who is an ADHD educator and coach, and we are so excited to dive in to hear your story.
Thanks. Yes. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So tell us, when did your ADHD journey begin?
So I've been in therapy since I was 15, and I was living in Chicago, and I had this great therapist, and she goes, have you ever thought about maybe having ADHD? I'm like, I'm not opposed to it, but no one's ever said anything before. Like, oh, we should get you tested right now. And they had a psychiatrist in the building. They met with me for 5 minutes and like, absolutely, yes, very good. And then I remember so I got on Ritalin first, and that gave me a psychotic break. But then I got on Adderall, and it was like, there's normally like a keg party in my brain. And all of a sudden, everyone just lined up and started talking to me one at a time. And I was like, I can have one thought after another. This is incredible. It did take some getting used to. I understand how people are like, I don't like this, because if you have a keg party in your brain, for me, it was like 20, but I lived in Chicago like 22 years old, 23, more or less. For 23 years, I had a keg party in my brain. All of a sudden, it's like, hi, I have a singular thing to say to you. Next, hi, I have a singular thing to say to you.
Yeah, it kind of gets lonely, right? It's a weird thing. It's like we kind of miss the demons, right? It's like, where'd the party go? Where'd everybody go? I'm all alone.
Just don't take your meds for a couple of days and I'll come rushing back.
They're like, hey, we missed you.
It kind of feels boring, I think, you know?
I mean, I did set the house on fire 6 times in my childhood. So, like, it's not that boring.
Oh, okay.
Just toned it down a bit, right?
Toned it down. Okay.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think finding that balance, I know a lot of people that take stimulants, you know, in particular, they will take breaks from it or vacations, maybe only take it on like work days where they really have to hunker down and focus, but then maybe on their time off or weekends, they won't take it because it's a hard balance. You don't want to lose all those great strengths and superpowers. You want to be able to leverage them. So finding the right treatment that you can be effective and functional, but still have that spice, right?
For me, the meds help with my anger.
Mm.
So to say don't take them on the weekends is like asking for fights, right? So personally, I take them every day, but when there was a shortage, I found other things that work similarly to kind of like help my brain kind of like not go 1 to 100 and like stop for a second and breathe. So there is like I think even when things are queued up, my brain is still saying wild stuff to me all the time. Like spicy things, like fun things, like making connections. Like it's not like I don't still have my same brain. It's that I can like 85% of the time remember to turn off the stove.
Important, right?
Yeah.
No, I feel you. I mean, for me, the meds help the most with emotional regulation, especially in motherhood. Like that's when all my symptoms came out, and you don't get a break from that. Like when I have issues getting a refill or there's a shortage, I do have to prioritize, okay, I really need it on my work days if I want to be functional and with it. But ideally, if I could take it every day, that's the most helpful because emotional regulation is part of executive functioning, which I need to survive. So yeah, if that really helps you and then you don't take it, you can feel that difference in just like regulating those outburst or overstimulation modes, right?
Yeah, 100%.
What was that like getting that information?
It didn't bother me, but basically they just said, here's meds, okay. And it wasn't until 2021 when I was in a social media audio room with a random person who told me that they were an ADHD coach. And I said, oh, I have ADHD. Like, oh, you should come to one of my talks. And I went and I learned all this. They just gave me meds. I learned all this other stuff and like how to actually work with my brain. I've been like white knuckling it. 2020, I'm 41. I was well into my 30s, white knuckling it on just meds. And when I found out that I had been doing that, I didn't need to be doing that, I was pissed. And that took me into, ended up going to ADDCA ADHD coaching school to really learn, like really deep dive into all the stuff around ADHD and how to help our brains actually work effectively as opposed to working against them. And it's just information that I feel like is more out now, right? With like TikTok and stuff, but like, it's still so many people are just being diagnosed and be like, okay, here you go. Right. Or like, you find the right meds to make you palatable to other people. And that's helpful, right? Especially if you want to have romantic relationships to be able to be in a place where like you're not popping off all the time, right? But how do you feed yourself? And that part was missing. I stopped interrupting all the time and I stopped having angry outbursts, and I could sit down for 10 minutes at a time, which is super helpful. But nothing about those meds helped me be the best version of myself for myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's like one tool, right? Like it can help
Yeah.
regulate the dopamine and help you focus. But
Yeah.
there's so many other aspects of ADHD that aren't addressed with medication or aren't talked about. And that's the
We just
hard
don't
part.
know. We just don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it is heartbreaking when your partner comes up to you or someone you love comes up to you and says, this is important to me. Why doesn't that matter to you? And you don't know that importance has no meaning to our brain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you don't know what's wrong until you find out, oh, actually, if we have a challenge or if we have urgency or if there are things that can get our brain in gear. But importance just is not a word that we can process in a way that it seems other people can.
Yeah, no, I think that
Yeah.
is the most important thing of all in the diagnosis journey. Yeah, treatment, medication, therapy, coaching, all those things are great, but it's really understanding and acceptance, really understanding your neurology, your brain, what motivates it, what doesn't, understanding how to leverage your strengths to overcome your challenges. Like I always tell my clients that they come in and they're like, fix it, fix me. I'm like, no, no, no. We're going to first start on acceptance, understanding, and self-love. And they're like, what? I want skills. Just make me better.
Just give me 3 easy steps. And that's also the problem with the internet, right? It's the internet is like, here are 3 easy steps. And I think those steps are so important. And those steps are things that I did not have until 2020, which is rude, right? But like you're saying, now that I have the steps, I can go forth, right? The other thing about ADHD that's fun is that every tool is going to wear off. So I had a paper calendar that worked for 2.5 years. I was like, I fixed it. I cured it. And then one day that paper calendar did not work anymore. And there were 3 months where usually I'm very on top of things. There were 3 months where I missed so many appointments before I realized like, oh no, I have to find a new thing because this thing that I thought was going to work forever, because 2.5 years is a long time for an ADHDer. Like I was like, I have solved it, knowing I was in school at the time. I knew all this stuff. I knew that I hadn't solved it, but you still get caught up in it, thinking that you have an answer. And then that answer stops working. So that's why it's so important that the toolbox is so that you have a toolbox already a step ahead of time that is so deep, right? Or that you're always building and adding to a toolbox so that when you're like, oh no, this tool that I thought was going to work forever stopped working. And I knew it was going to happen. Hold on. Go in the toolbox. What else do we have?
What else we got? Yeah, it's ever changing, right? Because the dopamine wears off. And we had talked about that, Susie and I, even just like with wellness, where it's like, oh, like I'm consistent with working out and sleeping and my nutrition's on fire. And then it's like, okay, now I'm bored. And it's like almost you get the ick for your coping skills. You know how you get like food icks where like you can eat the same food for like a month straight and then you're like, I can't eat chicken ever again. You get like coping ick, right? You're like, I can't use this planner anymore. I've got the ick.
Yes, agreed, 100%.
I think it's really common too that like we hear a lot of people that get diagnosed and then they don't have anything after to support the diagnosis, like they get diagnosed and then they don't really they're not told to like learn about it or read about it, or even if the doctor or psychiatrist like diagnoses you, they don't turn around and say, well, this is what it's going to look like for you. This is why. They don't really inform you. It's just like, okay, you have it here. Here are your medications. You're going to feel like a whole new person. And I think sometimes you do feel like a whole new person, but then there's still parts of it that it's not about the medication, how you feel and the voices, but like it's how you process things. It's how other people don't experience things the way you experience them, emotional dysregulation, being really sensitive to rejection. And sometimes in our lives, there's like no place for that, right? Like for Amy, your breaking point, I think, with this is like the parenting. For me, it was opening a salon and having to deal with different personality types. I've always been a peacekeeper and not a peacemaker. And so learning how to change that for me was huge because I'm people pleasing all the time and wearing myself thin. I've experienced burnout probably like 100 times in my business. But since researching a lot and learning a lot about ADHD, that has like really subsided a lot. And I got a lot of tools,
Yeah.
Peacekeeper versus peacemaker is the one of the best things I've ever heard. It's so deep.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
got like full
and
body like goosebumps when you said that, you guys. Like I've
yeah.
never heard that before.
Yeah, it's huge. It really did change my perspective. And I think perspective is key. I really do.
Yeah.
And like so much of my life, I've changed who I am and how I process things because my perspective has changed on things. And that was one of the big ones.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Chris, for you, like when you got your diagnosis and you finally got some of these tools and understanding, how did you show up differently? Like how did you change your life based on learning all of this?
It started helping people find love online in 2014. And I was doing individually doing that. And then I was asking, and then I would get referrals and I'd get another person. And I was like, oh, this one-on-one thing is rough. I need to work in groups. But to work in groups, you have to go ahead and have a niche. And everyone tried to give me a niche, and I didn't like any of the niches. And when I realized that I knew I had ADHD. I was found that fact that ADHD. All my friends have ADHD. Whatever, it's fine, right? Whatever. But then once I realized like all the stuff I didn't know, and I started to learn it, I was like, this is my niche. There is a space in here, especially as a queer person, to speak to, like, there's this book called ADHD After Dark, and it's about ADHD and sex. But in the first chapter, he says, this book does not address queer people because we didn't get any queer people in it. So like this research is only based on straight people. And there's a lot of stuff that is accidentally like very heteronormative. And I think a lot of the problems that we have are human problems and it doesn't matter like what the dynamic is. They're just like human problems. But I think speaking in a way that is inclusive to us was definitely missing from a lot of the stuff that I was seeing. So being able to come into the space and have a voice that acknowledges us, is one of us, and it is and can speak to us as well, I think was really what changed and drove me to work with what I have. And also, I've been an educator since I was 15. I used to do peer education for the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Health Collective. So my response to finding out about my ADHD, right, and finding out what I didn't know, right, it was just this thing that kind of happened within me, and I took meds for it until 2020, was to educate on it. Like that was how I processed it, kind of.
Yeah.
I processed everything, yeah.
No, I love that. I think that's just how our brain works. I mean, I was the same way. I've been a therapist for 18 years. Ironically, my first job was assessing kids for ADHD way back when I was in grad school. And I didn't really understand ADHD at all. And I am able to say that now. And so when I got diagnosed at age 39, like a year and a half ago, I was just like mind blown, first of all, like that I had this and that I had missed this and that I didn't even really understand like what that meant. And so I pivoted my whole practice after I like dove in, did all the research, learned everything. I'm like, I want to support these people. And then I realized a lot of people in my practice were undiagnosed and we didn't even know. So like that was almost part of
find each other.
Right? Like part of your like process individually, but also professionally, if you can align that. And so many people that we've interviewed in the series have done that. Like after their diagnosis, they have created a business kind of around that. And I love your unique voice, like you said, with the queer community, because I think so much of that is related to like the masking, right? And people pleasing, where I know so many folks start to kind of come out and identify as queer after they unmask or they really lean into their authentic self. We've also talked a lot about sexual shame. And oh my gosh, when you grow up socialized as an ADHD girl, right, based on societal standards, all the messaging that you receive about sex and sexuality, it's so toxic. Susie and I grew up Catholic too, so that adds just another layer of shame. And man, there's such a need for a community there.
And manic pixie dream girling us, right? In our generation, that was like this trope that you get these quirky ADHD or ADHD girls, right? They're now late
You're not wrong.
right? And then they save the men from whatever, right? So like
Right.
the only place we could see ourselves was in that peacekeeper, not peacemaker role, to Susie's point, right? So like to be able to deconstruct that is huge. I was lucky enough that my mother is also a sex educator, so I didn't have that shame. But I definitely, and I came out at 13. So I have a lot of, I don't have that to fall back on, but I am still, I did get caught up in your job is to save everyone else. Your job is to take care of everyone else. And even at the beginning of doing this work, my job was to save everyone else and help, like make sure that everyone had a good relationship with ADHD, right? It wasn't until I went to coaching school where I'm like, oh no, my job isn't to save everyone and tell them what to do. My job is to support them where they are. I'm a Virgo. I don't want to do that.
Yes. No, I mean, I think it's so important. And, just looking at our life and the different roles that we have and being able to redefine that, right? And not fall into like this normative standard in any area, whether it's sexuality, gender, whatever society's telling us, we don't have to fit into that. We've talked about this idea of what a neurotypical normative mom looks like, or wifey, right? And like that really hit me hard because I'm like, I'm not fucking Susie homemaker. Like I don't cook, I don't like to clean, I'm not fucking domestic. Like that's just not me. And my husband and I, like we are very non-traditional in our roles, right? Like it just works for us. But it took me a while to reconstruct that in my own mind because of all the messaging, right?